Hello everyone. So the topic for today is antipsychotics from CNS. So we'll be dealing with this like the pathophysiology for psychosis and the treatment for psychosis, the drug therapy for psychosis. So basically there are two types of psychiatric disorder which is classified mainly on the basis of judgment, insight, personality and contact. That is psychosis and neurosis. So psychosis is a serious distortion of thought, behavior, capacity to recognize reality and perception. Patient is unable to meet the ordinary demands of life. Whereas neurosis, these are less serious and the ability to comprehend the reality is not lost in neurosis, which is lost in psychosis. So psychosis is a thought disorder which is characterized by disturbances of reality and perception, impaired cognitive functioning, and inappropriate or diminished affect, that is mood. Now, psychosis, it denotes many mental disorders. Schizophrenia is a particular kind of psychosis characterized mainly by a clear sensory with a marked thinking disturbance. So, okay, the thinking process basically that is affected. Okay, and in psychosis, you know that this disturbance of reality and perception. Now, schizophrenia, as we have seen, it is a type of psychosis, right? In this, there's severe personality change and thought disorder. It occurs with there is no evidence as such of organic cerebral damage. It is a thought disorder. Okay. Here you have severe personality change and thought disorder. Okay. And there is no evidence of any organic cerebral damage. Now the disorder is characterized by a divorcement from reality in the mind of the person. It may involve visual and auditory hallucinations, delusions, intense suspicion, feelings of persecution or control by external forces, depersonalization, and there is attachment of excessive personal significance to daily events called as ideas of reference. So here you have basically hallucinations, delusions, okay, and what we call as ideas of reference. So in this basically you get something called as positive symptoms and something like negative symptoms. In positive symptoms you have delusion, illusion, auditory hallucinations, thought disorders with irrational conclusions, garbled sentences, stereotyped and aggressive behavior. Okay, so these are the positive symptoms. Delusion is false belief of something. Okay. Whereas illusion is false perception. Right. So these all such symptoms, these are called as positive symptoms. Negative symptoms, there's introvert behavior, there's poor socialization, emotional blunting, there is lack of motivation, some cognitive deficits. So this is seen as negative symptoms of a person with schizophrenia. Okay. Now pathogenesis for this is unclear. You can see some hereditary or some it's associated with some abnormalities in a mind neurotransmitter function. Okay. Now the dopamine theory of schizophrenia. Now this dopamine basically correlates, like how we can correlate with this dopamine theory is that antipsychotics, it has been found that antipsychotics, they reduce dopamine synaptic activity. These drugs, they will produce Parkinson-like symptoms. Okay, as they will reduce dopamine activity. If there is deficiency of dopamine, naturally there will be Parkinson-like symptoms. Now, the drugs that increase dopamine in the limbic system will cause psychosis. Drugs that reduce dopamine in the limbic system, that is, which will act at postsynaptic D2 antagonist, they will reduce psychosis. Okay. Also, we have found that there is increased dopamine receptor density in post-mortem. We have found that there is increased DA receptor density. Okay, and there is changes in amount of homovanillic acid, which is a metabolite of dopamine in plasma, urine, and CSF. So this goes for the dopamine theory. Like you have given antipsychotics, they will reduce dopamine activity. Naturally, as the dopamine levels are decreased, they will produce Parkinson-like symptoms. And if you give the drugs that increase dopamine, they will produce psychosis. So this goes in favor of dopamine. Okay, dopamine overactivity, which is responsible basically for producing symptoms of psychosis. But we have also certain evidences which are against this hypothesis. Like dopamine is not the only responsible amine for the psychosis. So antipsychotics are only partially effective in most of the cases, partially effective and ineffective for some patients. Okay. So there might be something else also that might be involved for this psychosis. Then you have phencyclidine, which is an NMDA receptor antagonist. It produces more schizophrenia-like symptoms in non-schizophrenic subjects than dopamine agonist. Okay, so here you can find some relation for NMDA receptor antagonist, which blocks with here where the drug is blocking that receptor. That might also be one of the reason for development of psychosis. And the third evidence which goes against the dopamine hypothesis is atypical antipsychotics have low affinity for dopamine receptors. Okay, so if we say that dopamine is the only amine that is responsible for psychosis, then we have drugs like atypical antipsychotics which in fact have lower affinity for D2 receptors. Still, they are very effective in psychosis. So this is the difference between these two classes basically. So we have seen the evidence which supports the dopamine theory. Then there is evidence that is against this hypothesis. Now there are certain other hypotheses just to name, like dopamine hypothesis we have seen in detail. Then there is serotonin hypothesis, glutamate hypothesis. Then you have seen the underactivity of NMDA receptors, which produces negative symptoms. Overactivity will produce positive symptoms. Now you already know what are the positive symptoms and what are the negative symptoms of psychosis. So to start with, we must know what are various types of dopamine receptors. So basically we have 5 types of dopaminergic receptors: D1, D2, D3, D4, D5. Now amongst these, D1 and D5, basically they increase cyclic AMP, which is second messenger. Okay. Whereas the rest, all they will decrease cyclic AMP. Okay. Now, important to remember is what are the various dopaminergic pathways. You have to know there are 4 types of dopaminergic pathways. You have the nigrostriatal pathway, which is responsible for voluntary movements. Then you have the mesolimbic pathway, which controls the behavior. Mesocortical pathway again controls the behavior. And the tuberoinfundibular pathway, which is responsible for prolactin release. Okay. So four types of dopaminergic pathways: nigrostriatal pathway for voluntary movements, mesolimbic pathway and mesocortical pathway for behavior, and tuberoinfundibular pathway for prolactin release. Now, when it comes to the treatment of psychosis, you have a class of drugs that is called as antipsychotics, also known as neuroleptics. Okay. So these are the drugs which are used in the prevention of psychosis. They have been termed neuroleptics because they suppress motor activity and emotionality. Now these drugs are not a cure. Okay. Schizophrenics must be treated with medications indefinitely in as much as the disease is lifelong, and it is preferable to prevent the psychotic episodes than to treat them. Okay, so this requires a lifelong treatment, and the main aim is to prevent the episodes. Okay, because these drugs are not a cure for this psychosis. Now, although these drugs are used mainly in the treatment, there are also treatment of schizophrenia. These are also used in the treatment of psychosis that is associated with depression, then used in manic depressive illness, psychosis associated with Alzheimer's disease. So these conditions are lifelong and disabling. Okay, so lifelong treatment for the prevention of the psychotic episodes, you require these antipsychotic drugs. So these antipsychotic agents, they're used in the treatment of schizophrenia and other agitated disorders. You have neuroleptics, atypical neuroleptics, that is antipsychotics, atypical antipsychotics. Then you have tranquilizers and anti-manic drugs. So this is the classification of antipsychotic drugs. Basically, you have in this major are two classes. One is typical antipsychotic drugs, the other one is atypical. In typical, you have phenothiazines, butyrophenones, thioxanthines, and others. Amongst phenothiazines, you have chlorpromazine, thioridazine, trifluperazine, flufenazine. In butyrophenones, you have haloperidol, benperidone. Thioxanthines, you have thiothixane. In others, you have pimozide, loxapine. Okay. So these are your typical antipsychotic drugs. Now, atypical antipsychotic drugs, you have clozapine, olanzapine, quetiapine, then you have indolones. In that you have Sertindole, okay, Olindone, Molindone, you have Ziprasidone and Risperidone. These are the atypical drugs, okay. So antipsychotic drugs, basically two classes, typical and atypical. In typical, you have phenothiazines, butyrophenones, thioxanthines, others. And then you have atypical antipsychotic agents. Now, mechanism of action, basically, you know there is psychosis because there is increased dopamine level. So if you block the dopaminergic receptors, naturally these are going to relieve this psychotic symptoms. Okay. So this is the mechanism of action. So these drugs are going to block the dopaminergic receptors. Now older antipsychotics, okay, the neuroleptics, these are D2 receptor antagonists. They are also effective antagonists at cholinergic receptors, 5-HT receptors, okay. Atypical neuroleptics, they also block other monoamine receptors like 5-HT. Okay. So blockade of dopaminergic projections to the temporal and prefrontal areas constituting the limbic system and in the mesolimbic areas is probably responsible for the antipsychotic action. Okay, so it is basically the blockade of dopaminergic receptors, mostly D2 receptors, which is seen with the older antipsychotics. Even the other receptors are also blocked, like cholinergic, 5-HT, norepinephrine receptors, any receptors, okay, that is alpha receptors. Now these are basically at the limbic area and mesolimbic area, and that is responsible for its antipsychotic action. Now these drugs, they produce a delayed onset because there is initial adaptive increase in firing of dopaminergic neurons and the turnover, which will subside gradually and it will reduce the dopaminergic activity. Now, why do we say there is delayed onset? Because initially there is increase in the firing, but later it will gradually subside and then it will reduce its activity. So the onset will take some time. Okay, onset of action, it will take some time because of initial increase in firing and then gradually reduction in the activity. Now, blockade of D2 receptor in basal ganglia. Yes, obviously it is going to produce Parkinsonian-like extrapyramidal side effects. Now, other monoaminogenic and glutamate systems are also affected. Only suppression of positive symptoms is closely linked to blockade of dopaminergic activity but not negative symptoms. Now, dopaminergic blockade in pituitary lactotropes, it will cause hyperprolactinemia, while that in CTZ will have its antiemetic effect. Okay, so whenever dopaminergic receptors are blocked in CTZ, obviously it was going to produce its antiemetic action as well. And the blockade in the pituitary lactotropes is going to cause hyperprolactinemia. There is increased prolactin secretion. Okay. We've already seen the 4 dopaminergic pathways and how these are correlated to all this. Okay. So the typical antipsychotics, yes, there's blockade of D2 receptors in mesolimbic system, the blockade of nigrostriatal pathway, which is responsible for extrapyramidal symptoms. Then there's blockade in the pituitary pathway, so there's increased prolactin level. Blockade of this dopaminergic receptors in CTZ, that is chemoreceptor trigger zone, which will produce its antiemetic effect. It also produces the anticholinergic and it has alpha blocking properties. Okay, so these are seen with typical antipsychotics. Now, atypical one, these are more effective against the negative symptoms, like we have seen the introvert behavior. Okay, so the negative symptoms of psychosis. It is also effective in patients who are refractory to typical neuroleptics. And the other advantage with atypical one is there is lesser liability to produce extrapyramidal side effects. This is because they have higher affinity for 5-HT2A, that is serotonergic receptor, and D4 receptor rather than D2 receptor. Okay. Yes, it blocks even the D2 receptor, but the affinity is much more for 5-HT2A and D4 receptors. So it's antagonist to alpha 1 and 1H1, that is antihistaminergic receptor, then cholinergic receptor, that is muscarinic receptor, and alpha receptor. Okay, and the antipsychotic effect is attributed to combination of its blockade for 5-HT2A and the 4D2 receptor. Absence of extrapyramidal effects is because of lower affinity to D1 and D2 receptor. Okay, So atypical one, it has higher affinity for 5-HT2A and D4 receptors. It also blocks as alpha and M1H1D2 receptors, and lesser or the absence of extrapyramidal side effects is because of lower affinity to D1 and D2 receptor. So here it is basically the affinity to a particular kind of receptor which is being shown here. For typical, you can see here very well that it is the, you can see this dopamine receptor, D2 receptor basically, which has a higher affinity and typical, whereas in atypical, you can see the D4, 5-HT2A, 5-HT2, 5-HT2, D4, it has higher affinity compared to D1 and D2. Okay, so this is seen with atypical one. Now the pharmacokinetics of these drugs basically, most antipsychotics are readily but incompletely absorbed. They undergo significant first pass metabolism. Bioavailability is 25 to 65%. Most are highly lipid soluble agents, highly protein bound agents. They have high volumes of distribution, slow elimination. Okay. Now the duration of action is longer than expected as the metabolites are present and relapse occurs weeks after discontinuation of drug. Okay. Because these drugs, in this the metabolites are, there are metabolites present and they will produce its action. So even you get the action for a longer duration. Okay. Even weeks after discontinuing the particular drug. Now most antipsychotics are completely metabolized. Most of them have active metabolites, although not important in therapeutic effect, but with one exception. Is the metabolite of thyroidazine, that is mesoridazine, is more potent than the parent compound and accounts for most of the therapeutic effect. Antipsychotics are almost completely metabolized and thus very little is eliminated unchanged. Elimination half-lives are 10 to 24 hours. Okay, so completely metabolized. Okay, and very little is eliminated unchanged. So the therapeutic uses of antipsychotics, they are not only the psychiatric indications as such for this antipsychotics, but you also have certain non-psychiatric indications as well. First of all, let's see some psychiatric indications where you can use antipsychotic agents. The first one is schizophrenia, which is a thought disorder. You have some positive negative symptoms in this. Okay, so in this the new patients, they treated with atypical antipsychotics. The older patients were responding and tolerating well. The whatever antipsychotic therapy is being given to those patients will be continued, though it may be some typical agent. But if they are responding well, they are tolerating well, yes, you can continue the therapy. Efficacy wise, the atypical antipsychotics are not superior to typical as such. It is just that with regards to certain adverse effects, because of the higher affinity of the typical one to D2 receptors, you get some extrapyramidal side effects. Only these are not seen with atypical one. That is the only difference. But if we happen to consider efficacy, then efficacy wise the atypical are not as such superior to typical ones. So the second is drug induced psychosis. There are certain drugs like LSD, that is lysergic acid diethylamine, or amphetamine, they also induce psychosis. Then you have schizoaffective disorders. And this there is schizophrenia along with some affective, that is mood disorder. Okay, so antipsychotics along with like you will require either antidepressants or you will require anti-manic drugs. Okay, if the affective component is either depression or mania. If the affective component is depression, you require antidepressants. If the affective component is mania, you require anti-manic drugs. Okay. So in the psychiatric indications, you have seen schizophrenia, drug-induced psychosis, schizoaffective disorders. Next is neuropsychiatric indications. In this, you have Tourette's syndrome, Huntington's disease. Okay, Tourette's syndrome. There is tics, grunts, vocalizations. In this, you can give haloperidol, pimozide. Okay, and Huntington's disease, you have choreoathetosis and dementia. Again, here you can use something like haloperidol, chlorpromazine. Okay, the typical ones. So these are the neuropsychiatric indications. Now the non-psychiatric indications. First you have seen the psychiatric indications, then neuropsychiatric indications, and now the non-psychiatric indications. Antiemetic, yes, because there is blockade of dopaminergic D2 receptors in CTZ, that is chemoreceptor trigger zone. So at the chemoreceptor trigger zone, when there is blockade of D2 receptors, naturally these drugs are going to produce antiemetic effect. Okay, now you also have anticholinergic activity and antihistaminic activity because they block histaminergic and even M1 receptors. So these are also helpful in its antiemetic actions. The drugs here you can see there's domperidone, metoclopramide, then promethazine. Okay. Next is pre-anesthetic medication. There are certain classes of drugs, certain anticholinergics, antihistaminics. Then you have certain benzodiazepines that are used as an pre-anesthetic medication. So in that, even this promethazine, which is an anticholinergic antihistaminic, this is used as a pre-anesthetic medication. Then you have droperidol with fentanyl, which is being used together and it produces neuroleptic analgesia. This is already being covered what is neuroleptic analgesia, okay, in your general anesthetic topic. So there is droperidol with fentanyl. Now there is a condition like intractable hiccups. When you get hiccups, then that time also you can give chlorpromazine and haloperidol. So these are the non-psychiatric indications. Now that coming to the adverse effects. Whenever we give antipsychotics to a patient, we are much more concerned like about the adverse effects. There are a lot many adverse effects because there are a variety of receptors that are being blocked by these drugs. So lots many adverse effects are seen with antipsychotics. So that is very important that we should know what are the adverse effects of antipsychotics. So if first of all, the CNS adverse effects will be the sedation, confusional status due to anticholinergic toxicity. There will be withdrawal symptoms, emergent dyskinesia, dystonias, the spasm of tongue, head, neck and face. Now that is due to anticholinergic and antihistaminic activity. Okay. Next, there is akathisia in which you have uncontrollable motor restlessness without anxiety. There is motor restlessness without anxiety. Then Parkinsonism, this you have already known. What is Parkinsonism per se? What is the presentation of this patients? So there is disturbance in acetylcholine and dopamine balance in basal ganglia, and this results in Parkinsonism like that is the extrapyramidal symptoms. Okay. Then there is something called as neuroleptic malignant syndrome in which these are the drugs basically responsible. There's flufenazine, haloperidol, okay. Basically more pronounced neuroleptic malignant syndrome seen. And there is perioral tremors, which is also called as rabbit syndrome. Then there's tardive dyskinesia, acute dystonia. These are the adverse effects. Just we'll go through what is neuroleptic malignant syndrome. Basically, it occurs in patients hypersensitive to the extrapyramidal effects of antipsychotics. Now, there is excessive and rapid blockade of this postsynaptic dopamine receptors. Okay, this syndrome begins with marked muscle rigidity. There is muscle rigidity. If sweating is impaired, there will be fever. Okay, there will be stress leukocytosis. And the high fever is associated with this syndrome may be mistaken for an infection. Now, autonomic instability with altered blood pressure and heart rate is another midbrain manifestation. Creatine kinase isozymes are usually elevated, reflecting muscle damage. Okay, so here basically there is marked muscle rigidity, there is high fever, there is stress leukocytosis, autonomic instability, altered blood pressure and heart rate, and creatine kinase enzymes are elevated, which shows that there is some muscle damage. So the treatment for this, it should be vigorous treatment with anti-Parkinsonian drugs is recommended as soon as possible. Then muscle relaxants such as diazepam, dantrolene, which is a directly acting muscle relaxant, or bromocriptine may be useful. Okay, so a very quick treatment is required, and there is muscle rigidity. You also need to give certain muscle relaxants. So this is neuroleptic malignant syndrome. So this is tardive dyskinesia, in which there is orobuccal lingual dyskinesia, like someone who continuously is chewing the chewing gum. That is the repetitive involuntary movements of lips, jaw, and tongue. Okay, so that is continuously chewing a chewing gum. Okay, then there is choreiform quick movements of the extremities. So as with Parkinson's, movements stop during sleep. There is no effective treatment. It is now the reason for this tardive dyskinesia is formation of newer supersensitive dopamine receptors. Okay, what happens because you give the drugs, they block the dopaminergic receptors, so there is formation of newer dopaminergic receptors, and these are highly supersensitive. So that is the reason for this tardive dyskinesia. Acute dystonia, there is spasm of muscles of tongue, neck, and face. That is acute dystonia. Now the autonomic side effects. There is alpha adrenergic blockade. The alpha receptors are blocked. Therefore, whatever adverse effects are seen with the alpha blockers, they will be seen with these drugs also. Like there is postural hypotension, there is loss of libido, and delayed ejaculation. Then there is anti-muscarinic effects. This dryness of mouth, constipation, urinary retention, disturbed accommodation. Okay, this is again because of blockade of muscarinic receptors. These are M1 receptors. Then we have endocrinal side effects like there's high prolactin secretion, which is responsible for galactorrhea and gynecomastia. Then there is decreased FSH and LH secretion, and this is also responsible for weight gain. So these are the adverse effects like autonomic side effects because of alpha blockade, anti-muscarinic M1 blockade, and endocrinal side effects. Now certain drugs, they also show this adverse effects like there is jaundice, this photosensitivity, corneal opacity, then there is epileptogenic effect, then there is poikilothermic effects. These are seen with some typical antipsychotics. Okay, so these are the adverse effects, and one really needs to know what all adverse effects can happen with this antipsychotics whenever given to a patient. Now, these are the characteristic toxicities that are seen with that particular drug per se. Like that drug will show that particular toxicity. Like clozapine, the toxicity or the adverse effects which is typically related to that particular drug is agranulocytosis, there's paradoxical hypersalivation. This is seen with clozapine. Then thyroidazine, it produces ventricular arrhythmias, there's conduction block. Then you have pimozide and ziprasidone. They produce prolonged QT interval. Okay, they produce hypokalemia and they produce a prolonged QT interval. Then we have quetiapine. Quetiapine is responsible for cataract, priapism, peripheral edema, and hyperventilation. Okay, so these are certain characteristic toxicities that are seen with this particular agents. Now, these are the certain drug interactions, yes, you should remember, because it is quite likely that the patient may be taking certain other drugs also. So it's important to know the drug interactions with this particular agents. So antacids, they decrease the absorption of this antipsychotics. It's very important to remember this. Then anticholinergic drugs, they will increase the anticholinergic effect. Okay, so it will be an additive effect as again, because these antipsychotics, they also produce anticholinergic blockade of M1 receptors, so anticholinergic side effects. And in addition, if you happen to give any other anticholinergic, then there will be increased anticholinergic effect. Alcohol, already these drugs produce sedation, so there will be more sedation when the person is taking alcohol. Then there's something like barbiturates, carbamazepine, phenytoin. They will decrease the antipsychotic effects. Okay, so if you give this drug, the antipsychotic effect will be reduced. Lithium. Lithium, it will produce NMS, that is neuroleptic malignant syndrome with haloperidol. Okay, so with haloperidol, lithium will produce NMS. Levodopa. Levodopa, because you will give dopamine at one level, you want to block the dopaminergic receptors. At one level, you will giving levodopa. So obviously, it is going to decrease the efficacy of neuroleptics. Oral contraceptives, yes, they will potentiate the hyperprolactinemia. Smoking will increase the metabolism of drugs. So the action will decrease. As the metabolism is increased, the action will be decreased. So now the anti-manic drugs which are used in the treatment of mania. Lithium. Lithium remains a drug of choice for the treatment and prophylaxis of mania. Now, acute manic episodes are managed with lithium salts. There will be carbonate or citrate alone, or they can be given in combination with drugs like certain antipsychotics, with valproic acid, which is an anti-epileptic drug, or certain calcium channel blockers. Okay, so either alone or in with combination of this certain medications like antipsychotics, valproic acid, or calcium channel blockers. Now lithium, it's a small monovalent cation. It is distributed in total body water similar to sodium. Okay, it may partially inhibit sodium potassium ATPase It inhibits antidiuretic hormone, therefore it will produce diuresis. Naturally, if it inhibits that antidiuretic hormone, it will produce diuresis. Then it may decrease the thyroid function, is teratogenic activity, and it is excreted by kidney. Okay, so this much to remember. It is not to be taken with thiazide diuretics. Lithium clearance is reduced by 25% if you take it with diuretics. Now, all neuroleptics, only the exception of clozapine, they produce more severe extrapyramidal syndromes when combined with lithium. Okay, so it should not be taken with thiazide diuretics because the clearance is reduced, and these the neuroleptics will produce more extramural symptoms when combined with lithium. Only the exception is of clozapine. Now, lithium, it helps to alleviate the depressive phase of bipolar illness. It is used in refractory depression when added to SSRIs. These are, these are the antidepressants, SSRIs, or TCAs, that is tricyclic antidepressants, but it is not a good antidepressants alone. Okay, in refractory depression, it can be combined with SSRIs, that is selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, or TCAs, that is tricyclic antidepressants, but not alone. Okay, so that is a depressive phase of bipolar illness. Okay. Actually, the mechanism of action, it will not alter the receptor numbers, but it is going to alter the coupling of receptors with their second messengers by reducing the G proteins. Okay. So per se, it is not going to act at the receptor number to increase or decrease the number, but it will affect the coupling of the receptors with their second messengers. Okay. So it will reduce the release of neurotransmitters like 5-HT, and affinity of binding to the receptor is reduced. It inhibits the breakdown of IP2 to IP1. So there is depletion of diacylglycerol and IP3 and decreased calcium in response to the activation of receptor. So the coupling and the second messenger, basically, that is decreased. Okay. So there is alteration in adenylyl cyclase and phospholipase C. So the coupling process basically is affected. It will interfere with the breakdown of certain this second messengers, like of IP2 to IP1, and then the depletion of second messengers. Now, certain other drugs like valproic acid, carbamazepine, calcium channel blockers. Now, valproic acid is a well-known anti-epileptic, has been found to have anti-manic effects also. It shows efficacy equivalent as that of lithium during the early weeks of treatment and is being evaluated for maintenance treatment. Is titrated well, the sedation can be controlled. Nausea being the only limiting factor in some patients may be used as first-line treatment for mania, although it may not be as effective in maintenance treatment as lithium for some patients. Similarly, carbamazepine is also effective as an anti-mania medication, maybe due to decreased overexcitability of neurons, and there are certain calcium channel blockers, but we really don't know like how these drugs will be helping, like what mechanism would be really helping to be use them as an anti-manic agent. So this was about this topic of antipsychotics, where we studied the pathophysiology, then we studied the major two classes of drugs of antipsychotics, that is typical and atypical antipsychotics, then the uses of antipsychotics, the adverse effects of all the antipsychotics, the drug interactions, the important ones to know. Then we've also seen something about lithium, which is an anti-manic agent. So thank you. This was all about the today's topic of